Team BnB V8. And what you see on your screen is Divinity Original Sin, the very first game. It's like me going back and playing Final Fantasy VII, but that's not why we're here today, this video game. No. We're using Twitch and this whole setup as a recording apparatus to record a Lockdown Edition episode. Long awaited and super overdue. A Lockdown Edition of Churning the Butter. The most butteriest, smooth, gutter butter country crock podcast you've ever seen in your life. And not only that, as I said, I am BnB V8, your host with the most boast. To toast the most roast, I am alongside with none other than the king of confection, the sultan of soft serve, the man of iced cream, the prince of the homogenized palace, the king of the Milky Kingdom, and all the rest of those fine things. I am here with the one and only Soft Serve Sultan, aka the Ice Cream Man. How you doing this fine Thursday?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself, sir?
I am doing stir crazy, and the walls are closing in because, ladies and gentlemen, as you already know, for reasons we will not state, because this is going directly to YouTube. And no, that's not me dying.
Oh no, you got it. You got it.
Stop it. Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that. It's not true. I'm not Tom Hanks.
Pitchforks. Where are your pitchforks, people?
Anyways, we're all locked down for the obvious reasons, and we can't leave our houses, so I'm going stir crazy. So I've asked and begged and pleaded with my friend to do this podcast because we got a variety of topics. And the first, most obvious topic is the lockdown itself. And y'all know why, for the stuff that will not be named, shall not be named, cannot be named, you know what I'm saying? But, we're like some of the people, me and my friend here, and our people of our ilk, some of the luckiest people because we're gamers. What that means is we play lots of video games, tabletop games, and etc., card games, all that. But we're also social gamers, and one of the things I wanted to talk about with my friend, and so the rest of the world can hear our thoughts is, before we get deep into it, I'm going to give you a little exposition on us as people, but we like going to our local game stores to play things like Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, varieties of different board games, so on and so forth. And the problem with that is, with what's going on, those type businesses, comic book shops and LGS, local game stores, they might not survive this thing, man. Because, they're kind of a luxury service. And they're not really, things like local game stores aren't really taken very seriously, and due to the effect of, those are the first things to go in times like this.
Yeah, your luxury items tend to go. Also, the other thing people have to take into account when it comes down to things like this are those things weren't making money hand over fist to begin with.
No.
So them taking a hit is actually really, really bad because they can't actually really afford to. Because no one, as much as you may dream or people may dream about, owning their own store or a comic book shop or so forth and so on, most people are dreaming about it because they really like the thing, not because it's vastly or massively powerful. I even seen a book once, which is how to run your local game store and make a moderate living.
Right.
That's what was the advertisement of how to open up this game store and get it open. So even at best, that's what you're going to make. You're not going to get rich. And now all these people need to, pay their employees and keep on bringing product and keep the lights on. And it's a real conundrum.
It is. And, you see a lot of things, as an example, you see, grocery stores and things that already did kind of deliveries for people to get food, to do curbside pickup. That was already kind of a thing. You could pre-order stuff and then go and then they'll bring it to you out in your car and all that. And now they're, they come to your house and then they'll send you, put it outside. You grab it from them, right? Well, you don't really do that with like board games. I mean, like
I
nobody's
mean, there are board game stores who are offering that, where you go to the board game and they basically kind of slide you out the game, and or just pick it up at the door. Like they are offering that. Our local game store, although it's not slided out the door. They are offering at this point in time for you can still go there and buy things, but they have a certain limit of people who can be in the store at once, and board game stores don't really make their money off of really selling board games, as in selling the time and the space.
so so meaning what's just crazy is you know you think people would be more willing to go to things like that during times like this, but they just can't because like I said, because like my friend just said and stated that not too many people can be in that building. Like about 2 weeks ago, I went to one of my LGS to play Magic the Gathering, to play Commander, no less, and that place was half the people it normally is, and that actually changed the experience quite a bit. And it was a big deal. And this was 2 weeks ago from today, and today is March 26th. So just to kind of let you know where we're at from now to then, it's crazy. So so what you can do though as a tabletop gamer, which is really cool though, to segue off of this is they do have online services like our group just did last week, where we went on like fantasy tabletop on like Steam, and we had all these real cool games that you can still play D&D. So D&D is the thing that's gonna save you during these troubled times. I'm telling you, if nothing can take your mind off of reality, it's Dungeons and Dragons. I'm gonna let y'all know. Also, video games. We've been playing mad video games around here. I've been playing loads of fighting games, and my friend's been doing his game on his channel. Go ahead and let us know about that real quick.
So I've been streaming recently. Been streaming Pillars of Eternity 2. Um, there's been a little of a short break into it because of things going on and lifestyle changes. Which I said, but we'll go back and get back to that. But yeah, we're streaming Pillars of Eternity 2, the PS4 version, and with all the new enhancements, we're doing a blind run, so I don't know what's going on besides the previous knowledge that I've played from the previous game, and I'm trying to stay blind and not know what's going on. So I'm avoiding spoilers, avoiding tactics and walkthroughs and all that good stuff.
Right. So D&D. The reason I bring that up. So, oh, also, where are you doing this, my friend? Because this channel that this video is emanating from is not the channel of which the play is being done. So please tell people about your personal Twitch channel.
Oh yes, you can find the live streams on Soft Serve Sultan at Twitch. So Soft Serve Sultan is spelled exactly how you think. And we do actually upload the replays of that onto the shared YouTube channel. So you probably would have seen my videos very recently. If you watch these, if you pay attention to the channel, you'll most definitely see my videos on a weekly basis.
Yep. On a so that's real good doing that. I stream occasionally on this channel doing Mortal Kombat 11. This is I try to keep RPGs off because I know that's kind of my friends in them's kind of territory. Like I can play RPGs, I'm okay at them, but my friends in them really that's their bag, so I kind of let them have that on the channel. I just play fighting games because I know that's kind of my thing on the channel. So we I kind of just don't step on their toes with that. But the other thing I wanted to bring up, speaking of D&D, I want to talk about D&D 5th edition because I got a lot to say about that, particularly that there's a problem with that game, and my friend knows exactly what I'm talking about. And one of the problems with that game is it's stale right now, and they're bringing out all these And I'm not talking about like settings and various things people could be bringing to, oh, they need more modules. No, I'm talking about the characters, man. Like one of the tropes for D&D over the years is that what you call it, monk sucks, all right? I'm just going to say it. There are some classes in D&D 5th edition that just stink, my man. And it's not even that they're unplayable, they're not even fun. Monk is like culprit number 1. Like Monk is so annoying to play in that game. And my friend is going to elaborate on that a little bit because so let's put it in perspective. Why we get to say Monk sucks, all right? Because anybody could just walk up and say, all right, Monk is whack in this version of this game. So let me break you down, my friend, a little bit before I go into myself. My friend here, Mr. Soft Serve Sultan, has spent 10 plus years playing D&D, running D&D, and you say to yourself, well, that's not a thing. No, let's talk about all the ways and things that my friend has done and ran D&D. This man has gone to 10 plus different conventions of different names, he goes to Gen Con on a yearly basis. How would you say you were a published person? Like you were on what was it?
I said I'm a okay. So let me get down my credentials. So I've been running and DMing D&D for 10 plus years. I am when it comes down to running game. I've at this point ran game at a professional level. I'm a published. When it comes down to modules, I most definitely have some stuff out there you can look up. Also have lots of experience running various different types of games for a variety of different people. So I've ran at multiple different conventions, and I have probably under my belt experience from 10 different role-playing games that are D&D adjacent, and a lot of them that aren't D&D adjacent or D20 adjacent. So I have, game mastery is something that's very important, but also, flavor, getting all these different rules together and seeing how you can make these characters work um, is something that's I put an eye to. I have an eye for character design, not only just on like a individual basis, but on a game mastery basis, as in also a game design basis, and that's where my actual problem with Monk lies. So there is a famous YouTube video out there that just talks about Monk sucks, and he did a great job talking about how Monk sucks and why that is traditionally. So I'm not going to step on that guy's toes. What I will say is I do have some specific ideas of why Monk sucks that he did not go into, of which I will elaborate. So the first thing you have to understand about is Monk is not a traditional fantasy trope. As in, it did not come from Tolkien. You won't see a monk on Lord of the Rings, and the reason why that's important is because that's where most of the people who generate their ideas about Dungeons and Dragons are in this Tolkien-esque sphere. So so my theory is oftentimes they don't know what to do with Monk because Monk is kind of a I don't want to say it's a well, yeah, it's an artifact of something that's just been done forever, has been done for a very very long time, and they have not. A lot of times they don't know why they have this still here. They look at Aragorn with the Ranger, they look at Gandalf with the Wizard, they look at several of the dwarves. They have, and you go into other, fantasy writing, the cleric, Dritz, all these other characters, and those are traditional fantasy tropes. And Monk does not, fit that. Someone who puts that in their fantasy novels is making a big deal to do that because it is not traditional. So I have a feeling, from what I've seen in 5e specifically, they have these things that are just carryovers from previous editions that they've just stuck Monk with, but haven't actually evolved that character. So my first example will be the key mechanic. So the key mechanic is the type of mechanic that is, you give someone a certain amount of abilities and you want to give them a limit to those abilities, so you give them a resource of which they need to spend in order to use these abilities, which is fine. It is something that is done with all, if not most classes. In the game, wizards have spells, even fighters have, action surges and so forth and so on. So that by itself is not a problem. That is not an issue. The issue with key ends up being that one of the defining things Monk has had over the years was the Flurry of Blows ability. And the Flurry of Blows ability allows the Monk to make more attacks than any other class in the game. And that has been one of the few things that have been in every single version of the Monk ever since it was an exploration of the fighting man or cleric class. So that is something that has been a defining factor of that class. And he's a melee type character. Now, the reason I bring that up is, in order to do this flurry of blows, you need to use key. And because you are using key, one of your abilities that define your class has a certain number of uses it can use. They're like, okay, well, so does Wizard. Wizard has a certain amount of spells. Spells most definitely define Wizard as a class, and that is true. But that's not true. It was like, well, so does, and Barbarian has rages. The problem is the rages that you're getting as a Barbarian most likely will last you for your entire day. You may get into a sticky situation, but it will last you most of your combats. You could actually blow all of your flurry of blows, which is your defining feature as a monk, in the first combat without trying very much. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do. And then you become a sad fighter, because the fighter still has most of the things he wants to do, most of his advantages, and you have none. So that's the first point. The first point is, right now, Flurry of Blows, key is not a proper use for that. Now, would I get rid of key? No, I would actually give them more extraordinary abilities that you would do with that. Because, remember, they don't have to be grounded by the same things that Tolkien did. They're actually based off of, Eastern Kung Fu martial artists, and, the wizard can cast Fireball. What they give Monk to do, he can do one more extra attack than a guy who was doing 2-weapon fighting. Okay, that's kind of lame, and that costs you 1 key point. I said to do. There's other people with their resources get a lot more use out of it. So there are things later on that they end up getting that are slightly more interesting, but I think they actually don't give them those interesting things because my point number two, and kind of goes back into the point they don't know what they're doing with the monk, is Ranger is a dex-based martial class. And I was like, okay, well, why is that important? Well, it is the dex-based martial class that a lot of D&D designers, from what I've shown, what they've shown me, not necessarily because I have any other reason besides their actions, but I think their actions is a good thing you can base, someone's actions on. You can base their thought process based on what they've done. So most of the abilities that Monk probably should be actually exercising or actually in the thought process of um, exists in the Ranger class. But I think what happened was they designed Ranger, and they had these all these abilities and had all these ideas, and then when it came down to Monk, they're like, Flamey Fist. Oh, but oh no, he can't have Flamey Fist for too long. That might have you be able to punch things good. I honestly don't understand. With the cantrip, the ability for, the wizard to do a cantrip and the warlock to be able to do cantrips in order to get this, typed, this unarmed type damage, because, the fire is fire type and force is for, Eldritch Blast. So it's not the type, of damage that they're restricting. So I'm trying to figure out what exactly they're restricting in this. Why? And that specific example, it has to do with the elemental fist. So we have the 3 different archetypes within Monk in the base book. You have the Shadow Monk, which is probably the best monk, but it's just doing a pale imitation of a rogue, to be honest. You have the Open Hand Monk, which is the most traditional monk, but it's so bland that it doesn't actually have very much flavor to it itself. Basic flavor is okay, but at that point, why am I not just playing basic fighter, which is a better class, if I'm just going to be generic? I can be a generic fighter and damage, and I might be better off in the long run. Or we have the monk of the different elements. The exact name escapes me, but it trades key points in order to do elemental type attacks. None of these are strong in a gameplay setting when you compare it to the other class, and none of them are pretty evocative either, because they're pretty limited in the amount of times they can do these things. And if you're going to give them the spell analog, their spells suck. If you're going to give them the analog of the fighter, well, they have to pay too much to do just as much as a person with two-arm attack is going. That is the basics of that argument. I could go on for hours. Are you still there, sir?
Oh yeah, I'm listening to you. No, you're telling it, man. You're telling it. And then that's not to say, there's even more different types of monks you could play if you use the various things, the Xanathar's Guide to Everything and so on. And some of those monks, and there's only, and unfortunately, there's only one notable monk from that whole thing. And the only notable
it's notable because of its flavor, not because of its mechanic. Because the best mechanics monk is the Kensai monk.
You just beat me to it. That's what I was going to say. The way of the Kensai monk. The way of the Kensai monk is the one monk that's actually playable, if you ask me. That's the actually and traditionally Kensai was like a class unto itself, and it was kind of was it a prestige class in 3.5, sir? If I'm not mistaken.
In 3.5, it was indeed a prestige class.
Yeah, so Kensai has kind of always been
But it wasn't necessarily tied to the monk in any specific way.
Right. And the biggest draw to Kensai is that it opens up some of the martial weapons to the monk. Now, just think about that for a second. What I just said, it opens up martial weapons to a monk. Now, as my compatriot stated, wouldn't you rather just be playing fighter? Because now you can use your monk weapons. You can use your monk weapon. You can use your monk abilities with a weapon. But the thing you're gonna do is
you can flourish blows with this martial weapon.
Ooh. The only 2 weapons in the game of 5e that I can actually think would be useful to do that with is a whip. Because the only reason you do that is because you get a thing of reach. It's literally the only way to get monk reach. But you're handicapped by a poor damage die. And then you can get a longbow. So wait. You mean this is I could be a monk and have a bow? But isn't that just ranger? It is. You know what I'm saying?
And a
Like
poor facility of.
and a poor facsimile thereof. Like the thing my also friend didn't also my friend didn't mention is that rogue in 5e specifically is damn near a better martial class than ranger and a better martial class than obviously a better martial class than monk. And why I say it's better martial class, I'm not talking about a ranger is using a bow. If he uses anything else that's not a bow or some sort of projectile weapon like a bow, he's getting beat out for damage by the rogue in fifth edition. In fifth edition D&D, he is getting beat out for damage, thanks to good old fashioned sneak attack and the prerequisites that have been relaxed from previous editions for sneak attack. So like,
Yeah, I think now. Granted, I would say when it comes down to straight up sustained burst damage, the ranger can outbeat the rogue in damage. It is possible, but I would tell you that what the rogue is getting in exchange for that is expertise, and expertise is probably one of the best mechanics in that game.
expertise, and to elaborate on expertise for those who don't know, he's referring to the skill expertise, meaning that you can add additional abilities to your skill requirements. Like,
And also at higher levels allow you to not fail at certain abilities no matter what.
yeah, skill checks. Like a rogue in his classic skill checks. Like that's what we're doing out here. I'm a rogue. Why am I a rogue? Because of sneak attack and skill checks. Like that's what we're doing, and it's great, you know. And for that reason, it's great. Like you can just be out here doing stuff. But another reason that people forget, people who haven't been playing D&D as long or don't know the history of D&D, another reason why Monk sucks is it's the original homebrew class. Think about it. Think about that statement I just said. It's the original homebrew class. When D&D was a thing, you got to remember back at the time, it was the kung fu craze of the 70s, man. The kung fu craze. Everybody wanted kung fu fighting and Bruce Lee, and they were writing these books, and you had the TV show. You know what I'm saying? Kung Fu with Grasshopper and all those guys, and you had, you know what I'm saying, the Green Hornet and all that, and people just wanted to be those guys. They
Right.
really,
I think the problem ends up being is none of those guys who created them or created the monk now have like the love for those kung fu classes because most of the people are playing D&D. Now, granted, they're fantasy lovers, and that's great. You really probably should be if you're going to write and design Dungeons and Dragons. But they have this class that seems to be like their blind spot.
it's a
They just can't
holdover,
seem to get they just can't seem to get right.
but it's been around so long, and so many people have played this crappy class over so many years that to not have it bothers people. But
Hmm.
it's like the thing. It's like the thing everybody doesn't want to see leave, but nobody wants to deal with when it's there. It's like that relative that comes over to your house and says, "You know what? I'm gonna spend the night over at your house." They're like, "Okay, that's nice. Yeah, I'm gonna be here. You gonna be here for like the weekend? No, I'm gonna be here for like I don't know, 10 years. Wait, what? You gonna start paying rent or doing something useful? Nah, nope. I'm just gonna be over here just doing stuff. What you mean? It's like to use a '90s reference. It's like Brother Man from the Faux Flow. He always coming around trying to borrow stuff. And the thing Monk is borrowing from you in this game is your time, because he's a waste of it. The monk should be two things. The monk should be the arranger, meaning it should be a self-sufficient class that doesn't rely that the beauty of the class is that it doesn't rely on the party's resources in the same way that the rest of the party does, i.e., self-healing, good skills. Because traditionally, where monk has
It
kind of been,
also doesn't need all this gear.
yeah, also doesn't need the gear, doesn't have to share in the party loot the same way, and your benefit for that. And but the downside to that is, you know what I'm saying? As a player, you have to manage your time and abilities, right? You have to actually manage things. Like, you have to be smart. In other words. So it should be easy to learn and possible to master, like martial arts itself. Also, the other thing about monk, um, why it's a problem is it's been saddled in the idea that it's a mage killer, and people have tried to defend the monk class by saying it's a mage killer, kills wizards, it's really good at it, it's good saves, and so on and so forth. That was
That's
true
not.
at
Yeah, that was true in 3.5. In order to make sure nothing was too imbalanced in the game, they made it so it didn't have good saves. It has just as good save as anything else. So I that's a bigger problem with the edition in general has
being 5e.
less to do. Yeah, 5e in its laudable quest to make everything equal makes nothing worthwhile or makes nothing special.
Yeah, like one of the problems with 5e is that its quest was to be simple, because what people didn't like about D&D and D and why you couldn't get, folks from outside of the D&D sphere into the D&D sphere was the first thing you would hear, and it gave me problems. I'll tell you, it gave me problems learning to build characters and how long that took. In a game like the third point 5 edition of D&D, it took you about a good 5 to 15 minutes to build a character, depending on what your character did, what the class was, and how much you wanted to optimize. In fifth ed, it takes you mostly almost always like 5 minutes to build a character from start. Like
Now,
even
granted, I would say that you would probably need to have a good idea of what that character was if you're gonna take that amount of time, because it may take some people that amount of time just to fill out their sheet. If
oh
you already
yeah,
have an idea what you need, is pop 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 pop. Most of that time is you know just writing the stuff down.
yeah, because you really already know what you want to do. Now, another thing that I really like in fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons is in some of the source materials, specifically Xanthar's Guide to Everything. There is a subclass of fighter called Samurai. Now, the reason I bring up Samurai is that's all the Eastern flavor you're ever gonna want and need, and have a good character to boot. And if you build that character, it does everything you would want a monk to do. Because back in the day, in the Eastern, in the way in the actual monks actually used weapons. Monks fought people with weapons. So you think, well, that's a samurai. It's not a kung fu guy. Well, monks use swords and shields too. Believe it or not. They also samurai back in the day shot bow and arrows and rode horses like knights. But I mean, it's just it's the death nail in the coffin of even the 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 fighter in fifth edition. His Eastern flavor is better than the monk's Eastern flavor. So the actual flavor of what the monk gives you, being the Eastern flavor, isn't even like all there. You know what I mean? Like there's better East.
I'll give you another example, and this is from the base book. And this is what if I were to remake the monk, or I were to remake the base book, I would have actually made one of the fighters' classes or subclasses what the monk actually should have been, and that is the Battle Master Fighter.
Yes. So
Battle
elaborate.
Master Fighter is a class that is based on decisions you make in order to modify the things you can do in the game. And I'll give you an example. They have several different actions you can take during a turn or during a how can I say uh, other word could I use? During a turn or during a reaction, that you sit there and say, well, I can attack, or I can do this that has this tactical ability, or I can do that that has this tactical ability, or I can do this that has this tactical ability. And why this is important is one of the roles you have found often monks to try to use in order to differentiate themselves from, okay, well, not every single class can be the best at damage. Not every single class can be, the greatest bow guy or the long range guy or the toughest guy. Well, what can monk do? They can be the battlefield control guy. And unfortunately, Battlemaster does that better than the monk can. And so that's another niche that monk just doesn't have. So the problem with monk isn't monk. The problem with monk is it has no place in the game. It does nothing itself that other classes don't do. And at least if you don't have a reason to exist, then people, then you're just wasting time. You're wasting people's, actually you're being disingenuous if you're giving someone a choice that actually has no reason for them to pick. You're not doing them any favor to make a choice that in the end won't actually help them.
No.
It won't actually progress what they want to do. If it's a trap, then you've just wasted theirs and your time.
You really did. And, you know, you could say, well, I like the flavor. Like I said, you could like the flavor of monk, but the samurai does that. Now, not to simplify for the people who aren't as familiar with the should I say technical terms of what my friend was saying. He was talking about a battlefield controller. What does that mean? That means essentially what I like to call, and put in simple terms, a crippler. And what that does is it'll put a negative connotation on your on the enemies that you face. For instance, you can knock them down, which is kind of like a status effect. You can make it so they can't attack your friends and they have to focus on you. Varieties of things and so on and so forth. What it
Restrict
does,
their actions.
yes, it restricts your enemy's actions without actually just outright killing them, which is actually a thing, believe it or not, in other games. Now, the other problem is I was talking earlier about Mage Killer. Well, the problem is that in 3.5 itself, the original Pathfinder game, I like to say Pathfinder 2 and 5e, the Paladin does a much better job at all of that, and it's not even close.
Also, I'll be honest with you. The idea of a mage killer is a misnomer. That is that thought process doesn't really make sense in a class as a class definition, because the class definition can't be the anti of another class. For example, no one looks at a barbarian and says, "Man, barbarians, they're the big thing killer. The rogue is the trap killer." Like it's a weird thought process to begin with. Much less most classes that they've labeled as mage killers oftentimes don't actually do the job. So not only is the thought process or the whole concept kind of weird to begin with, to as a core concept for a class, just to be anti another class that may or may not ever show up, because your GM may or may not ever have you fight a mage. So that's odd. Now my class doesn't do anything. Or it said, and then it doesn't actually do it well, because magic is one of the strongest things in Dungeons and Dragons. It's one of the big things that separates it from other type games, that there's just straight up magic in the world. And because of that, and they basically give it to all the classes. So
All
is it
of
an
them.
all class killer? Hardly.
Hardly. It's very disappointing if you ask me. Now, Now, for the folks who hear this and go and have played a lot of different you know have played a lot of different role playing games, they'll have one thing to say, and it's kind of obvious to say, but my Pathfinder, my original Pathfinder Monk is so great in that game. Yeah. Now, why is Monk much more palatable in that game versus this game, right? Why would a person make this argument? Because what Pathfinder did was they expanded on what the monk can do. So in Pathfinder, that game is revolved around something. The original Pathfinder, mind you, Pathfinder 2 is a little different. In the original Pathfinder, that game
It's
was
not that different. It's the same. It's the same concept.
okay. The nickname us veterans of tabletop gaming called Pathfinder, and you can kind of call the new Pathfinder the same thing. It was Feat Finder. Now, if y'all are familiar with what feats are special abilities that you come across that you choose for your character, and you gotta go through it and then you put your nose in the book and look at all the abilities and choose what you feel is the best one for your given situation, right? So, with that being said, you know what I mean. You know, they had all these monk feats, and they basically just gave monks abilities. Now the problem with that is the monks had those abilities, but it's not like you couldn't get those things to other classes. It wasn't like it just happened to be, they gave them special defeats, and it was because of those outside things and nothing that monk actually did in the core class itself that actually made that thing playable.
Well, I would have to disagree. Um, so they did give them those style feats, which is one of the big things they get, and all these different maneuvers and so forth and so on. But one thing they did do with those core classes is, although other classes could take those feats, none of them could take it or do it like the monk did. Like, I'll give you an example that is very well known as Master of Many Styles. Now, other people could have styles, but one, it would cost them feats, and Monk just got a bunch of style points. They just straight up got free styles, so they're going to progress further in it than others. And two, Master of Many Styles and other prestige classes or archetype classes for that also allowed you to do things with those styles that other classes couldn't get. So fighter could most definitely get, you know, all these style things, but he couldn't be in two stances at once, or you couldn't have, progress further in a style. They legitimately even said, hey, if you're getting this style as a monk, you can progress further in the class. They Pathfinder is very good at letting other classes have access to things without making it so the other things, you know, just do it better than the original class it was designed for. So 5e has kind of a similar idea of which, hey, you can pick up these spells through these feats, or you can pick up these things through these things, but sometimes they're so open, or their archetypes are so unfocused that it's easy to manipulate, or it's easy to duplicate what one class does in another class because how general everything is.
Right. But my point in saying that, though, is that my point in bringing up defeats and saying why that's kind of not like a thing is because, okay, while those archetypes existed, right? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't until they created that sort of concept of these additional choices. Like I'm saying, the core class by itself, if they didn't have those special style feats, it wouldn't be very impressive. You know what I'm saying? So they had to go. So in order to make the class, super playable and so forth, they had to go out of their way. Like they had to give it special attention. They really had to sit
Yeah,
down.
no, they most definitely did their homework. They gave it special attention. You are correct in that. It wasn't and that's mostly because Pathfinder, for those of you who don't actually have the, the knowledge behind that, is how Pathfinder was designed. Pathfinder was designed as an expansion on 3.5. So because it is an expansion on 3.5, it has a lot of the uh, base things that 3.5 has. Whereas the base class itself can be pretty bland, but then it's built the inside the game it is built in that you would add more specified things to the class. 3.5 use prestige classes, and Pathfinder has a few, but it's not the focus. What the Pathfinder's big focus was archetypes, which is something fifth edition just cribbed. Fifth edition just straight up just stole archetypes from Pathfinder.
Oh yeah.
Um, and they should have done it, and it was the best. It was the best choice for them to do. But we recognize where this idea came from,
Mm-hmm.
and it was from Pathfinder. As in, rather than making all these prestige classes, um, a thing, you got specializations, but you had to commit. Because the problem with prestige classes ended up being were, and actually, let me give it a basic breakdown of what prestige class is. So, prestige class is similar to feats and fifth edition, if you're familiar with those, which is it's a class you could take afterwards, but it had certain prerequisites. Like most feats have certain prerequisites. So you'd take these classes after you met these prerequisites and got to play a more specialized version of a class. Now, what ended up being the problem with that is people would play the game, to get these really good prerequisites, to get one or two of the first abilities, because they want you to, want to get into the class, so they front load the prestige class, and then they jump into it, play it for one level, and then they're off on to another one to kind of like collect all the really good abilities in the beginning of these prestige classes, which not only made the class, structure, extremely difficult for, even experienced players and GMs to keep track of as a player, much less the GM themselves. So what archetypes, how that solved that issue was, okay, we can have this more specialized version of this class. We can, have this cool thing, and we're not going to even make you wait. We're not going to even make you jump through a whole bunch of hoops and say, hey, you have to get, collect 5 coins and, get these specific things and get these specific scores in order to get into it. We're going to give it to you right away. But in exchange for this, you're going to have to commit. You're going to have to say, I'm doing, for this class, I'm going to be this type of class rather than try to cherry pick and get the best of both worlds. So they gave you more power and they gave it to you more immediately. But and they even gave you reasons to stay into it in the long run. But the downside was you had to commit to your choices, and you had to play it. You had to play your gimmick for the long haul.
You really did. There was, and that was just the facts. That was the matter of fact. It wasn't something that. It's not something that you get to choose. Now, like my compatriots said, they used to nickname Pathfinder, the first Pathfinder, 3.75. For a
Yep.
very long time, that was the nickname for that. And
They even put it on. They even put it on banners and stuff like that. 3.75 lives.
yep,
It's
that
like
was
their
something
first
they used to say,
advertisements.
man. It's something they used to say. So, you know, my point in saying all that and why all this stuff matters in the term of monk sucks is that's one that's the most obvious problem with fifth edition. Now, another thing about monk before I move on to the next point I want to make about fifth edition D&D is if like my friend said, fifth edition is gonna crib archetypes. Maybe they should have cribbed some of the specialty things that Monk does as well, like those style
Yeah.
abilities and things like that. They should have just cribbed a lot because, to be honest, without it was so bad that Pathfinder had to go well and far out of their way in order to make Monk great again. To say it in that way, um,
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They had to do it like that to make
It's
Monk.
because it's the reason why they had to fix it is because in 3.5 Monk the base Monk wasn't that great to begin with, so
It
they
didn't
had to go
work.
out their way in order to do it.
It didn't work. Simply put, it just doesn't work, my man. Like you could talk to anybody you want. It just didn't work. It wasn't worth it. You got good saves and that was it, man. That was really it. You got these good saves or whatever, and that was it. And there was none to it. There really wasn't. There was really none to it.
Like that, no, I know a lot of people who might be, if you're experienced with 3.5, you're like, well, I had a lot of characters that had Monk in their class. And I'm like, oh, you probably did, but you probably stopped playing Monk after a while. And I, you know, I'm a person who loves Monk. It's actually my favorite class. So as much as you probably hear me talk as much crap about Monk and this and that and this, you would probably assume that I hate Monk. Actually, I say this out of love. I like Monk more than every single other class in the book. But it actually makes me even more sensitive to what their failings are.
Oh yeah. Now, now there are uses for Monk in a lot of these games. One of the good things, because it's not all bad with Monk. There's something to Monk. But one of the few things that for Monk that you can actually do with Monk is Monk doesn't require a lot of gear, i.e., it doesn't require a lot of straight up equipment, and because it doesn't require a lot of equipment. Once I save my game real quick, if you're looking at the screen, uh, what that's cool is you can play what some people like to call the frilled human or the weird creature. Like if you want to make a creature, a monster, a playable character, traditionally one of the things you were able to do was to give it monk levels. The reason why you were able to do this was because monk was able to use abilities that didn't actually require items. So you were able to get around the like you okay, I'm a centaur, right? Okay. So I can that's an easy one. I could be a fighter and do this stuff, or I could also be a monk and have all these cool abilities and good saves and actually have things that I can do and just punch people. And I can substitute my punches for hoof attacks and things like that. And you can make all these exceptions, right? And you can play around with it like that. And those are things you could just do, which was kind of cool. So it wasn't all bad in the history of Monk. There was a use to the class, and that was it. Now another thing you could but even with that being said, another thing that ended up happening with Monk was you also were able to give those creatures sorcerer and wizard classes and just give them magic on top of that. But Monk was also a good way to just give people give monsters something to do if they couldn't use
Yeah,
weapons. Like if a monster couldn't use weapons or really armor, you could just give it a monk class, and there you went. You know, off you went. My friend can play he wants to play as a dragon. He can now do that because he's a monk. You know what I mean? I can just give him monk levels. There you go.
hmm
That was one of the few things you could actually do with monk that wasn't that out of the out of the realm of possibility. Something you could actually do with the guy. So it's not all bad. But that was the one saving grace for that class. And even in 3.5 there was books for 3.0 if you interpreted it directly. There were ways to play monsters and it was actually kind of rewarding and fun. But if you could but you see how niche I had to go to find something to do with monk, right? You see how far I had to actually dig into the tomes and the books to make that work.
hmm
So the other thing though that I want to say is I want to talk about we've been bagging on monk for however long, but that's not the only problem with 5e. And one of the big problems with 5th edition D&D is and in my opinion, now please feel free to correct me, because I'd love to be wrong about this. High level play. Now, what's the issue with high level play? It's not as rewarding as other game systems, because it gets to a point where you have all these abilities and you have all these things mapped out, and you already know what you're gonna do. You have all your strategy routines, and you're at this point you just go through the motions for a lot of it. Like I haven't seen anybody play 5e at like 10th level that didn't kind of already know what their character did and really were just kind of boosting numbers at that point. They weren't really adding too many like life changing things, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
Like your character was pretty much figured out by that point. Like you knew what you were gonna do, and everything past that point of 10th level was just adding to the things you could already do. I know
Yes, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of meaningful choices left to make.
exactly. So then, now because of that, what does that? Well, you're like, well, that's kind of fine, right? Like that's not that big of a deal because, you know what I'm saying. The players don't need to like do all this extra homework and all this extra, stuff. They can just play at that point. They know what their character's gonna do. That actually becomes a problem, in my opinion, for the GM or the DM, the dungeon master, the GM, whatever you want to call it, right? To me, it makes that a problem for that person, because then if all these characters are already figured out, how do they keep this game interesting when the game itself doesn't help them? Because one of the exciting things as in playing an RPG, a P&P RPG, pen and paper, or what have you, is actually, ooh, what am I gonna do with my character? Can I do this? Can I do that? Like mulling over those choices and making those characters be who they are. That's part of the fun. That's a big
Hmm.
part of the fun. For me at least, like deciding like what my character is gonna do, that's super important. And w- and when you have this character where you don't have to make any choices, you know what I'm saying? Like, where's the only other thing you have left to do at that point is react with the world around you in the game. So that makes the life of the GM harder, and because the GM has to deal with your ass, doing all this silly stuff already, it just the game kind of doesn't go anywhere, if that makes any sense. And I'm sure my friend could elaborate on this even further because he's played in what's called Adventure League, and he would tell me stuff about this all the time about how he had this 10th level character or this high level character, and there was really nothing for him to do. He felt like
Yeah,
he
and
didn't.
this is so. Let me clear about what I mean by there's nothing to do. I'm not saying that there's no adventures or there's nothing there. What I'm saying is there's no more meaningful choices for my character to make. As in, I can like usually when I hit level 10, so forth. I've made all the choices that are going to be important for my character. I've have a good idea. Now, granted, most people could say, hey, by that time you should have a pretty good straight idea, what your character is going to do, is the midpoint for your character. And I would agree in that. And so what I would say is there's not a lot of exciting things coming. And I usually play spellcasters, and spellcasters have the most exciting things to do. Like the difference between I would say a 10th level fighter and a 15th level fighter isn't that big of a difference. It's probably one more attack. Honestly, it's probably one. I got one more attack. There's not a lot of carrot at the end of this. At the end of this rogue especially at a high level, and that's why most campaigns in fifth edition don't take that long. They don't actually go too much further than that because there's not that much to do. There's not a lot of important decisions to be made at that point. So that's what I mean by there's nothing to do. I'm not saying there aren't adventures or there aren't literal things to do. I'm saying that there's not a lot of important decisions to be made for a lot of characters.
So with that knowledge in mind, though, Mr. Ice Cream Man, I gotta ask you, as a GM, as a person who would run a game, what would you do in a fifth edition game of which all the characters were at that kind of level? What would even be, would it be just like super game specific things you would throw at them, or like what would be the modus operandi to keep the game, enjoyable at that point for yourself and for the players?
Well, so here's here's how I feel about that problem, because that's a very different thing. I'm talking about game design, and you're asking me as a GM, and those are different things.
Right.
So if I'm a GM, what I'm going to what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw you more exciting threats your way.
So
So that's my actual answer to that. But and I'm going to start giving you more exciting or bigger problems to hold. But that doesn't solve the problem of the game system. It's
right.
just it's just one way of doing it. Now, if you're talking about what would I do in order to design it or change something as a game design issue,
Right.
then I would say there needs to be better end game abilities. There's got to be a carrot at the end of this. There's got to be a reason why I'm going to spend my time going all the way to the end of this, journey. I would say Pathfinder. I'm singing Pathfinder's praises a lot in this, and I not trying to rag entirely on fifth edition, saying it's all bad, but I will most definitely say that it has issues. Um, and there are things that Pathfinder does wrong. But one thing it does is at the end of the game, it has a nice, super super juicy ability at the end of a lot of those archetypes. And there's a couple of fifth edition classes that does that as well. Like I would say, Barbarian, the being able to break the rules on getting a higher ability score than what you're supposed to be able to do. That's a good one. I'll say some wizards have some pretty decent end game abilities, but there's nothing at that level, 15, 20 for a lot of these classes that, are super, super, oh, I can't wait until I get here. I can't wait till I get to level 15. Oh, please let us play a high level game so we can get to level 15 and play with these ridiculous abilities.
I have to take an exception to something you just said as a
But,
per. Okay, so one of the things that when I started playing D&D, it's to my personal friends, it's not a secret, but to the wider world, it may be. I am a ridiculously big wrestling fan, professional wrestling. Now where am I going with this? Hold on, I'm talking about like, and I grew up, some of my favorite wrestlers are the Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, all that, right? These big giant men. I was also a fan of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe because all of those Funimation cartoons would come on. So and so one of my favorite movies in extension was Conan the Barbarian, and to this day he is my favorite Marvel comic book character and one of the few ones that I feel is written right. But the other class in 5e that is the biggest disappointment to me, even though my friend here likes, Monk, he's going to point out the fallacies. I have to point out the flaws and fallacies about our friend Barbarian. That guy, while he doesn't have it as bad as Monk, in the history of D&D, in the 5th edition sphere, he feels redundant. To
so
fighter,
here's the thing. I said, if you're just asking me where's Monk on a healthy level as a class in general, I would have agreed with you. But we're talking about the 20th level ability, the end game,
right? Now I'm
and
getting to that.
having a juicy capstone.
I'm getting to that.
And
I am gonna mention that.
okay,
I'm going somewhere with that.
okay.
So, if you'll permit me a small moment, I have to look up something real quick so I can get it correctly. 5E, because I want to read this specifically. It's a spell in 5E called Big B's like Magic Hand or something like that. Yeah, Big B's hand is like 5E. Something like that. Something like Big B's arcane hand or something like that. Some of that. It's arcane hand. So arcane hand is a 5th level evocation. Now, why do I care about this? The capstone for Barbarian to reach level 20 is he gets to break the rules of the traditional thing where all ability scores cap out at the number of 20 and go to 25 a strength. You will definitely be able to cast a 5th level spell as a wizard much before you hit the level of 20. So, with Arcane Hand is a 5th level evocation. That's my favorite type of wizard to play also, by the way, because I like explosions. A casting time of 1 action in a range of 120 feet. It's concentration up to 1 minute. Class wizard. You create a large hand of shimmering, translucent force in an unoccupied space that you can see within range. The hand lasts for the spell's duration, and it moves at your command, mimicking the movements of your hand. The hand is an object with the AC of 20 and hit points equal to your maximum hit points. If it drops to 0 hit points, the spell ends. It has a strength of 26, plus 8, and a dexterity of 10. The hand doesn't fill its space. Now, that's the first of 3 small paragraphs of this 5th level spell. But I will reiterate, it has a strength of 26. Thus, the wizard, with a single action, casting a 5th level spell, can cast a spell and summon a celestial force hand that will eclipse the entire possibility of strength of the barbarian by 6 points. Because there is at no time, you will not, at the time where you will actually see a 5th level spell, you will not see a 20th level character at that table. If you do, please let me know who's playing 5E at 20th level. Because they'll be the unicorn and an exception to the rule. So, the barbarian, as much as I like the idea you get to have 25 strength, you will never see that 25 strength, and you will be embarrassed by your wizard friend because warriors do not read books, ladies and gentlemen. So, in 5E, with the fighter being so powerful and the paladin being so powerful, you will not see anybody actually sit down to a table and play a barbarian without actually having experience in RPGs for somewhat of a long time. Because if you just read what the barbarian does, it's kind of whack. And it's right there with Monk in terms of if Monk wasn't there, I personally believe barbarian would be one of the worst classes in 5E. And I'd love to get my friends' thoughts on that.
So what you're talking about uh is Big B's hand, right?
It's
You
called
probably looked up
Arcane
a source
Hand.
that said it's Arcade Hand is probably from a source that can't say Big B's hand because Big B
No,
is
it's from
a
no, it's from 5E. It's from
where
5E.
is it from? What's the website?
Oh, the website I'm looking at is Roll D20.
Right, Roll D20 doesn't own the name Big B.
Okay, sure. But that's what it's called in the book.
It's called Bigsby's hand.
Yeah, online, if you're looking it up, it's Arcane Hand if you want to find it. It's neither here nor
So,
there, though. My friend's making a point.
so I would say there's a couple caveats I would put to that. One is that the barbarian is walking around with that 25 strength. He has that night or day. You can't anti magic it away.
No,
You can't counter spell it. It's his thing, right?
yeah, when he gets it, if you ever
It's,
get if you get to 20th level, the game will end before that. Is my entire point.
right, but I was making a point that there's should at least be capstones that are worth doing.
Right.
And I was
Okay.
giving the example of what a good capstone at least kind of looks like
Kind
in
of.
5th ed.
Yeah. All right. I
Like, could
follow
you
you
come up
so
with a better
far.
capstone?
For a barbarian?
No, in the game that currently exists.
Oh, the druid has a better one than the barbarian. The druid's is that he can stay wild shaped for an indefinite amount of time. That's much better than what the barbarian has. That's I find that to be much better what the barbarian has because at 20th level, the amount of things that you can wild shape into and transform into is much greater than it, and in the long run than just having 25 strength.
Okay.
So there are better capstones. As an example, I'm sure the rogue has a better one than the barbarian
No.
too. No, I don't know the rogue's one offhand, but I can definitely say that the druids is offhand. Also, yeah. So would you say though that the sorry for us arguing a little bit, folks, but we're having a discussion on this. So
But
would
that's
you
what a discussion is.
right? So would you say though that my assessment is correct that the next worst class up from monk is barbarian and 5e?
Mm, mm,
Not in the history of
not
D&D.
quite sure.
Not in the history of D&D because in the history of D&D in general, barbarian has been very good, especially at lower levels. Like
Um, I would, for my inability to think of anything that's worse. The only thing I can think of that's even comes close is possibly sorcerer.
sorcerers now, magic.
Magic is cool and all.
Magic. I mean, magic is just better than bad fighter. I'm sorry. Just being able to cast spells in general is better than bad fighter.
So
And
here's the problem is magic's cool, but almost everyone gets magic.
right, except the two people who we said were the worst two classes in the game. Those guys don't get magic.
Well, that may be the reason why they're.
Why they're the two worst classes in the game? Yeah, just maybe, just
I mean,
maybe.
monk and barbarian can get their own form of magic.
No, that used to be true. Back in the 3.5 days, they used to be true. And what I mean by that used to be true is, you know, like back in the day, uh, the the barbarian had one spell. The orc barbarian at first level had one spell. It was called Falchion. And he used his spell. Why? Because he would bless you with that, and you'd be magically dead in one stroke. Let it be known. And and for our friend Orc Barbarian, he had higher than 20 strength at first level in 3.5.
Right, but
Uh,
we can't compare 3.5 to 5th ed
no,
in that
no,
regard.
but that's I'm just exacerbating my point that in previous editions back in the day, that Barbarian didn't always have it so bad, as opposed to Monk who always had it bad. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, but that's the sad thing to say.
That is, that is, that my favorite class. Now the peanut gallery out here is trying to tell me that I need to mention this Ranger in 5e, right?
Ranger doesn't actually have a problem. It just has one bad class,
Yeah,
or
it's
has
one
one
bad
bad subclass.
subclass that doesn't work. But
The
man,
rest of the
Ranger has
subclasses are just fine.
just fine. Excellent.
Senator
Excellent,
Guide
excellent, excellent.
had 3 subclasses for Ranger, and they're all good.
Oh my goodness, Gloomstalker. Just to name a few, Gloomstalker. If I have to go over, like, I'm
Gloomst-
gonna go over what this does real quick, just for the folks at home. Like,
so Gloomstalker's just fine. Uh, the Planner one is great,
oh yeah.
and the Monster Expert one is great as well.
So at third level, when you get your Gloomstalker ability, you get this Dread Ambassador ability. You can give yourself a bonus to initiative rolls equal to your Wisdom modifier. Period. Dot. That's the first thing that it gets, and just in that by itself, because Wisdom is going to be one of your highest stats. Because in 5e, our friend Ranger has a full D10 hit dice, as opposed to in previous editions where he had a D8. And on top of that, he also has Ranger also has magic. Ranger gets spells. He's in the I got magic club. Lest we forget. And then the second ability of Dread Ambusher says at the start of each combat, your walking speed increases by 10 feet, which lasts until the end of turn. If you take the action on that turn, you can make an additional weapon attack as part of that action. If it hits, the target takes an extra D8 damage of the weapon's type. That is also known to us 3.5 players as skirmish. That by itself is ridiculous. The amount. So, what makes Ranger like not useless as opposed to the rest of these classes in 5e? Two things: magic and damage. Raw, unbridled, ranged, low risk, high reward damage. So, an example of why range damage is so darn good in 5e is to let you know, Wizards of the Coast, who makes a D&D, put out a list they compiled of feats that were chosen by class, the most popular, based on what they've gathered from their findings at various adventure leagues. The number one fighter, the number one fighter feat chosen was called Sharpshooter. Just by hearing the name Sharpshooter, I'm pretty sure you can figure out what that's about. Because you're not shooting swords, you're not throwing axes. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no dwarven crossbow in this, and longbow in this game. It just ain't a thing. You dig what I'm saying? Like, and that's not even the end of the things you get at third level. That's not even the end of the stuff for Gloomstalker. Like, the other thing they get at third level is you gain dark vision up to a range of 60 feet. If you already have dark vision, its range increases by 30 feet. You are also adept at evading creatures that rely on dark vision. While in darkness, you are invisible to any creature that relies on dark vision to see you in that darkness. That's ridiculous. Absolutely, completely ridiculous. For dungeon delving,
I said so. Once you have that ability, basically you are the thing that creeps on the things that creep in the night.
yeah, you're the
Like
ghost.
they straight up said that they created this class to basically simulate a character like Batman.
Yeah. So, to quote my man Spawn from Image Comics, Todd McFarlane, to quote my man Spawn, you are the ghost that goes bang in the night, my man. You are the ghost. Like, that is so ridiculous good. It's not even a joke. And, like, so it's true that they kind of screwed up, or should I say, Wizards of the Coast kind of screwed up Ranger in 5e. Some of their abilities didn't work as intended when the game first came out. They have made errata since then that kind of course corrected some of that. Um, The
But here's the thing: I said even though that's true, it still has other abilities that that made up for those things. I said, but it had abilities. You're basically saying that didn't work as intended. The problem with monk and barbarian are the abilities are working as intended. They still suck.
yeah, like just being able to like shell out that much damage with a bow and having magic and having access to a variety of spells was good enough. It was good enough, my friend. You had no reason. You almost had no reason to choose the fighting style of dual wielding with a ranger. You had damn near no reason to do it. So while ranger is bad in one way, is really good in another way. So much so where you would go to tables and you would see people very much play ranger. And when they shot that,
We actually have a friend who plays ranger all the time, and we can't get him to stop playing ranger because he loves him some range damage dealing.
oh my God, our friend Benjamin,
Yes.
Benjamin, I can't keep a bow out of my hand, Mills. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
guy. Yeah, that guy has made a D&D career out of range damage. Benjamin, Order of the Bow Initiate, Mills over here. Can't keep a quiver off my back and an arrow out of my hand and a bow out of my other hand. That guy, the only person I know that actually sat down and played Order the Bow Initiate. Not to say that that's bad. He's just I've never actually seen anybody like go out of their way to do that, and he made it very apparent. Precision damage is legit. You got to get used to it. He played so much range damage characters in various games. It made me play one of my favorite classes in 3.5 called Scout and start doing skirmish damage. And why does that tie into this? Because that's what this Gloomstalker is. It's almost a now they actually have a I don't know. No, they don't. There's no Scout in 5e, is there? Not that I'm aware of. Nothing called Scout.
There is.
Yeah, it's different though, right? It's not this.
It is. It's not that, but there is a archetype called Scout.
Yeah, like just the just the abilities you get from this Gloomstalker is ridiculous. Like the abilities you get Iron Mind, which gives you proficiency in Wisdom saving throws if you don't already have it. And just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, Wisdom is one of the best proficiencies in that game. Because a lot of that enchanting type stuff is Wisdom based. Because unlike previous editions, you have stat saves as opposed to just save saves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of a thing. So also, just to kind of get off the D&D track for a little bit, um, I also sent my friend a song to so me and my friend are avid fans of hip hop. Mostly, 90s and above hip hop. You know what I'm saying? We like rapidy rap rappers, lo-fi stuff sometimes. You know what I'm saying? We don't like most of this like new age stuff. No trap, mumble rap, none of that, none of that. None. We're like we're snobbish about our hip hop music. But I sent my friend a song and I'm eager to see what he thinks about it. The song I sent him, for those who don't know, is the new song by Joyner Lucas called Will. And I sent this to my friend, and I just wanted to know what his thoughts on that song. And there's one other hip hop topic I want to get with my friend on that's kind of interesting.
So when it comes down to Will, um, I'm gonna say that every single time I hear a new Joyner Lucas song, I'm again impressed. He's been hitting it out of the park every single time. I think he's making not only good listenable music that actually matters, that has something to say. He's not, he will just put out a song, a brag song, a song to dance to. But he will also most definitely put out songs that, okay, well, this song has a meaning. Okay, well, this song has, purpose behind it. Not just, for the sake of putting out a song. There's other things going on in this music. And it's been a breath of fresh air just to see, Jordan Lucas do this in general, but especially to see them, go about and say, well, what else? What else can we do? What else is important? What else could we have done here? And Jordan seems to be, you know, making these songs like this one. His biggest thing was, hey, give these people you look up to, these people, you admire, give them their flowers while they're alive. And I think that was a great feeling. Also, bigged up a guy that I'm a big fan of, which is Will Smith, for a wide variety of reasons. I was actually I was surprised to see Will at the end of the song, which was cool, because that means though I really would have loved to see the video of someone showing Will this song, like his reaction. I would really love to see that. So I kind of felt robbed of that moment once I seen him in the song. I was like, okay, well, I don't want to get that moment, because I was like, as soon as I seen or heard the song, I was like, because I know Will has a YouTube channel, and he has, he's gotten more into this type of media. I was like, ooh, I can't wait to see, what his reaction to this kind of stuff is going to be. So that was kind of robbed of that. But besides that, little, slight, thing that I can't look forward to now. I think that song was pretty good. His flow was pretty good. His integration of the, different movies were excellent. Getting all the, I'm gonna say, what would I describe it as? Getting all the, not only just the references in the, just the song, but actually with the, video as well. And you should most definitely, if you get a chance, watch the video as well. It was pretty good. It had great production value, though his last song had great production values. He's not only thinking about this as, just a song by itself, but he's also thinking about this as a video. And that's in the age we are now. You can't, and you can kind of be, sad or mad about this fact, but you have to think about not only these songs as just pieces of audio, but you have to think about them as a visual, have a concept behind it. I'll give you another good example of a song that did that very well and seen to a lot of success, which is "This Is America" by Childish Gambino. Who just recently put out a project. I have not got a chance to hear it yet, so I can't really say much about it. But "This Is America" was a good song. It's a decent song, but I think it's an amazing video. And I think that song becomes, as good as the song is, becomes less potent and becomes less of a thing without the video. And so you could take that as a negative, but since we live in the age that we do now with video and sound, and like most people are probably going to listen to this on YouTube and stuff like that, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad choice to make. If you're going to make somewhat, a worse song, but to have an amazing, excellent video, that may be a risk worth taking. And I think that's most definitely paid dividends in this video. And Jordan Lucas has had a lot of good videos recently, and just in general. So I think he's most definitely one of, especially for a newer artist. He's not brand new, but a newer artist. He's most definitely one of the ones I'm the most impressed with. Every time I watch his videos, I feel like I'm gonna see something great. So.
So, So I like Jordan Lucas. Now I can't sit there and say my personal stuff. I like every song that he's
I will
ever
say I
done.
liked every single song he has, but it made me look forward to seeing every single song.
Yeah. Now there's a couple of songs that he has that I kind of don't care for, and there's a lot of them I do. I like Jordan Lucas a lot because he's a newer artist, like my friend said, and it's good to see newer artists who both can appeal to younger audiences as well as older audiences. That is super refreshing to me. Um, Another artist for hip hop that I think can do that is YBN Corday. I'm a big fan of that guy too. I can't say I like every song, but a lot of that music I like for that guy. And this song in particular. Also, you did just ask you a question before we go on. Give me a 1 through 10 on this song.
Eh, I knew you were gonna ask that. I hate this question.
We always we ask each other this on a lot of stuff. And the next
I would,
topic,
I would want to watch this like 5 more times before I give you.
okay.
Because I watched it once and you're getting my initial gut reaction.
That's
I want to
and
give a grade
so
on a
okay.
gut reaction.
Get okay. Okay. I didn't want to do now. My friend also asked me about the next topic we're going to talk about for hip hop music. The next topic we're going to talk about, my friend actually asked me, and this is a little bit of an older topic, the same question, and I didn't give him an answer for a very similar reason. And I personally believe, or what my 1 through 10 on this next topic is going to be, and I personally believe I owe him that. So
So,
I
so,
owe
what's,
him.
so,
So the next
so
topic is there's
I'm
this
curious.
if y'all not aware, there was a brand new mixtape brought out by one Mr. Young Hova, aka Jay-Z. Oop, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, y'all. I got it wrong. I'm just a white dude. I don't know too much about stuff. That was actually an album by this dude named Jay Electronica after 10 years of being absent from the hip hop scenery. He comes out, Mr. J Electronica, very famous East Coast rapper, comes out with a brand new album. Um, and my friend had graciously asked me to listen to it. My friend here is very much a fan of Jay Z, as am I. And to be quite frank, I felt like it was a Jay Z mixtape. And to sum it all up, there was some good tracks on there. The Ghost of Soldier Slim is my favorite track on there. It's also the first track on the album after the intro. My problem with the song, although it's my favorite song on the entire album, is the very first vocal verse you hear after the vocal intro. The first rapper you hear on his entire album is Jay Z. That was very disappointing to me. I felt that's kind of a big deal. If and Mr. J Electronica, who I only know from Exhibit A and Exhibit C, I am not known of his discography. So whilst I do like the songs I've heard, I am not a longtime fan. But I do know that that he hasn't made an album or a mixtape of this stature for 10 years. With that being said, I think very poorly of this album, and I give it a 4 out
You
of
give it a
10.
4.
Yep, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
Everything on this album was hot, except for the guy whose name is on this album.
So
Alchemist.
I got a question for you. I got a question for you. As a Jay-Z project, what do you give it? Because I'm
Oh, that
guessing
shit
you're
gets an
giving
8.
that as
That
a
shit
Jay
gets an 8.
Electronica project.
That shit gets an 8. That shit gets an 8. Like I want, like we need a new Jay Z album. Stat. Let me get the new Jay Z mixtape. As a longtime Jay Z fan, how in the God's name, like this dude was? I've never heard Jay Z talk about subjects like this. And why you gotta out Islam Jay Electronica on his own shit? It was crazy. It was crazy. It's like if you go to a restaurant, bro, and you order something, and you order like a steak, and the steak comes with a baked potato, and the baked potato is so good you forget about the steak. It's like, bruh, or like, if you go on a blind date with this girl to see this girl, and this fine, beautiful woman pulls up, and say the girl's name is Stacy, as example, right? And you think this, and you waiting at the designated spot for Stacy. You don't know what she look like. You know, and this girl pulls up in this clean car, and she looks great. And you looking in the driver's seat because you think Stacy driving herself, and she rolls down the window because you looking at her. She goes, "Are you know Roman, right? That's my first name." I go, "Yeah." "Are you Stacy?" She goes, "No, I'm her sister." And Stacy gets out the car, and she just is horse face, and she doesn't look like her picture she sent you on the internet, and blah blah blah.
Are you saying you got? It's
I got
like I
swindled,
picked up. It was like, oh man,
bamboozled.
I'm looking at this chick, and I couldn't find out. And so I'm thinking I'm dating this chick, or I'm about to go on a date with this chick, and I'm looking at the Uber driver,
We
and
got
that bitch is
catfish,
driving
brother.
away, and I gotta look at this chick now.
Yes, we got catfished. Ice
You
cream
got
man.
catfish.
We got
Oh man,
catfish.
that's I think that's one of the best descriptions of that album. You got catfish.
We got catfished, my man. It felt like, okay, it felt like Jay-Z was like, bruh. Okay, you know how movie properties gotta like renew the property, otherwise they lose it.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly what this felt like. It felt like if they didn't do something with Jay Electronica, they couldn't use his name for nothing no more. Like this felt contractual.
Wow.
Like you ain't getting paid if you don't do this album. It's made me want a new Jay-Z album stat. We need 555 in this mug. We need more Jay-Z in our lives, bruh. He was killing it, my man.
You know what's the sad part? That shit makes a lot of sense. It was like I heard someone else saying something a little bit different. He was like, uh, I'm not sure if you how long of a fan you were of Kanye, but Kanye had this story of when he first got his album, right? And
Uh-huh.
they were worried. They didn't want to give him an album all this time, rapper, producer, whatever, right? And they were like, well, if the album's trash, we'll just put Jay-Z on every track and save it. And
Man.
like, is this what happened? Is
Yes.
this
Bro,
is this
yes.
the if break glass is Jay-Z the if bad break glass
Bruh.
artist?
He like
Needs to
Snoop
save
Dogg.
the needs to save the album.
Him and
Put
Snoop
Jay-Z on it
Dogg,
real
bro.
quick.
Him and Snoop Dogg, the same shit. In case of mercy, break glass and call Snoop. Snoop will
Uh,
go up there, he'll do the hook, a verse, and a whole bit. Like Snoop Dogg is on that level too.
yeah.
Like Snoop Dogg can do that. Like one of my favorite, I'll even say it. Insane Clown Posse has a good song with Snoop Dogg. Like Snoop Dogg is that dude. My favorite line from the song too, just to let you know, in that same song. See, cause my brother, I have an adopted brother. He was a big ICP fan, and when I lived with him, he'd play their music all over the house, and I didn't care for a lot of their music. But there was a couple tracks that like were kind of like bangers a little bit, and that was one of them. And just to show how weird it is, Snoop Dogg's best line on that song was, "It's a bird, it's a plane, it's the big Snoop Dogg down with the insane." That was the best part of the whole song. The point I'm making at is, yes, Jay-Z and Snoop Dogg, like Snoop Dogg, they're on the same legendary status of hip hop, could just show up, take over your whole thing. And you speaking of Kanye West, what's funny is Jay Electronica felt like Kanye West a little bit, like in some of the parts, how they structured some of the music back on like Watch the Throne
Mm-hmm.
album. It felt like some of that structure. It was cool to
Mm-hmm.
see. I forget the name of the track, But one of the tracks was produced by Alchemist, so you could tell if you're a longtime hip hop fan of Alchemist and those guys. And it was real cool to hear Jay-Z rap on an Alchemist track. That was actually pretty cool. It was one of those on there too. I can't remember the name of it. One of them was obviously an Alchemist track, like the
Mm-hmm.
beat. And something you told me when we first discussed the album was
A lot of
you were
people
there
call
for
it
the
like Watch the
beats.
Throne too.
But I'm gonna steal some other cats said, but they were right when they said it. This feels more like Watch the Quran, my man. Let you know, bro, because it was so much Islamabad stuff up in this song. Like I ain't got no problem with that. But Jay Electronica, I'm gonna say this: you are not Brother Ali. You're not.
Ooh.
You're not, my man.
Ooh.
You got some work to do if you gonna be on that Islam all day. All right. Like
Ooh.
that's an example of like a dude who can talk about Islam and hip hop all he want and make a
Mm.
track that's interesting. I'm just gotta say it. Like, and I'm glad Mr. Electronica found Elijah Muhammad in his life. You know, like religion is a beautiful thing if it comes with in the right reasons. You know what I'm saying? For
Mm-hmm.
the in the right reasons. Like, and he has, and don't get me wrong. Like, don't get me wrong. He has some fire lines. He has some fire lines in the track, right? In the thing. And I'm talking about Jay Electronica. In his own album, he has some fire lines. Like one of my personal favorites was when he talked about when he was talking about the synagogue of Satan. And like
Mm-hmm.
that's a controversial line because I'll just say it. It was this guy named Rosenberg. He's on the Breakfast Club, right? That's where he's on. What's the name of his show? That's not the Breakfast Club, is it?
It's the Breakfast Club.
That's the one he's on. I think so. I got it right.
Mm-hmm.
As a Caucasian man, I must say Mr. Rosenberg is a simp. I can't put it in no other words. SIMP. The fact that he was offended by that felt so fake and forced. Also, Mr. Joe Budden, I'm going to say it too. I said it on our podcast. Mr. Joe Budden, who has an excellent podcast that I listen to on occasion, is friends with Jay Electronica. And the whole supposed beef between them two dudes was as fixed as a pro wrestling feud. All right? He was trying to help out these mans and them, and that's all that is. So don't take that seriously. Ain't no beef. If anything, like Homeboy should be embarrassed. Like put put the final stamp on how I feel about this album. And this is and I'm gonna jump a bar when I say it. It's very plain and it's easy to see for me. I wanted a lot more J and a lot less Z.
Mm.
I can't put it no other way than that. Cause I wanted to see what the hype was. Cause Exhibit C and Exhibit A, especially Exhibit C, was just ridiculous. I felt like I was on a freestyle, the freshest freestyle, like Locksmith and them cats was dropping some stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like Royce the 5'9", who just did a killer freestyle not too many days ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a couple of weeks. That dude, y'all should go listen to the song Caterpillar with Eminem. That song is fire times 3. Man, that stuff out here, bro. Like, that's my opinions on that album. And I know this is kind of a late opinion to have because it already passed. But I started it, just to because my friend wanted to hear my opinions on that album.
Mm-hmm.
Now, enough about me riffing and trying to be bombastic. What about you, sir? How'd you feel about this album?
Um, a lot of the things you said, I will agree. Um, you took a lot of the things out of my mouth. I would say that this album may, in the end, get forgotten for
Yeah,
as a J Electronica vehicle. This will be a very hard album to look for in the future
yeah.
because when I in the future look for this Jay Z album, I will not be able to find it.
No,
I will be upset and I will scratch my head for, you know, for many a year or many a time trying to find this album in the future. So
Like the
like it's and unfortunately there's a couple of projects that have that issue, and this
yeah.
is another one of those projects.
Can I ask you a question though? I gotta
Mm.
ask a question for the same reason that the same thing I said. Does this make you want another Jay Z album though? Like straight up.
Yeah,
Like do we want another 444? Now I got one
yeah.
problem with that though. The only problem I got is if he did another 444, is he put 9 tracks on that damn thing. Now back in the day, in the 90s, when I was a kid growing up, you had to have 10 tracks to be considered an album. If you had less than 10 tracks, you was considered a mixtape or an EP or whatever. But
Hmm.
you had to have 10. Michael Jackson had 10. He would come out with his stuff would have 10. So if Jay Z does make a new album, man, because of the same, because everybody wants to hear more Jay Z after listening to this, he better have 10. Just give us one more. He had 9. Just one more. One more. I got to do one more. One more track. Give us a solid 10. That's all I want. So I want 10 more fresh tracks to Jay Z. I'm convinced at this point Jay Z can take any reasonable subject matter and make a decent rap song out of it.
Yeah,
Cause
he's pretty
like
decent at it.
they had
Uh,
like, go ahead.
no, I wasn't going to say anything else besides he's pretty good at it.
Yeah,
Like
like
he's
that's like Jay Z killed it, man. He like just like Eminem, you know. Eminem when he did a song with Jordan Lucas called "Lucky You." If you listen to that track, you know you will realize Eminem is not washed up either. Him and Jay Z, they're not washed up. They're these old cats. They're not even close to washed up. Not even close. They're so far from being washed up. But you know who might be washed up?
oh,
I hate to say it, Mr. Electronica. It might be time for him to I don't know hang him up. Like it's a real possibility. This might be the last commercial endeavor you ever hear from this man, and everything else gonna be some independent shit. Like
yeah,
like I don't know if this guy does another commercial album like this. He's got a lot
yeah.
of reasons to not do that no more. Like to be like, eh. But after 10 years, bro, 10 years. Cause I remember when Exhibit C came out, it was like the freshest, most like if you didn't hear Exhibit C, it was like when Black Thought did that freestyle. Not too long ago, it was a freestyle. It was like you ain't even a fan if you don't know this exists.
Hmm.
And it was just so disappointing, bro. I thought this was Exhibit D. Like I thought we was out here. The thing was called a written testimony. It was so disappointing. So disappointing.
He said, if this is a written testimony, oh man.
It looked like this was a written testimony by the shorthand person that writes in court. You know what I'm saying? When the dudes be on the stand and the clerk is over there shorthanding all the stuff, that's what this felt like. That's this felt like let it be known. Wow. But we still got things to look forward to in hip hop, like this ADHD when it all comes together. You know what I'm saying? Jordan Lucas is pretty hot. There's some other cool acts out there you can look forward to. So it's a group called Arm& Hammer. Y'all want some lo-fi hip hop just off the rip? Spelled like the baking soda, but the arm and is one word. Space Hammer. That those two dudes are really slick. You Run the Jewels is still good. Like it's a lot of good hip hop out there. Don't let this disappoint you. I mean, if it disappointed you, that's fine, but don't let hip hop disappoint you. There's a lot of good music still left out there.
Hmm.
Oh yes, like Run the Jewels just dropped something not that long ago. That's still good. But yeah, I gave my exposition. So with that being said, music was our third and final topic. We talked about how we feel about the current times and local game stores. We riffed on D&D forever and a day, and then we got into a little bit of hip hop music. So, any final thoughts, Mr. Ice Cream Man with the heart so cold?
Yes, guys, you can find all of this on BnB MKE. Take care of yourselves. take care of your people, and in these times, even though you may not be too affected by this, there are people out there who are. Be responsible. Uh, don't just be responsible, man. Like I know a lot of people out there are just say, well, it's not going to affect me. You know, this lockdown situation. I'm young, so forth and so on. I would say that's a terrible way of viewing these things. So that's been a thing that's been, I've been thinking about, and I've been seeing a lot of people out here being foolish. So take care of the people around you. Take care of yourself. Also, if you think, you know, you're too young, this stuff, you can't die, you can't, this other thing can't happen. A wise man once said, on the healthiest day of your life, you're just healthy enough to die. So take care of yourself. Take this shit seriously. And, you know, as much as I would have loved to have this conversation and had this thing up front with my friend, um, in person, this was the better choice. This is what we had to do. So make the sacrifice so we can get through with this and we can move on with our lives.
Yep. My final thoughts is like my friend said, stay safe. To quote a great man of fiction, one Jean-Luc Picard, do not give in to fear. Uh, you'll hear a lot of crazy things in the media and in the things around you, but don't give in to fear. Give in to reason. Be smart, be reasonable. You know what I'm saying? There's still things open. One of the things around here that's open is an establishment called Quick Trip with some very reasonably priced fried chicken. You know what I'm saying? Don't be scared of the world. I mean, there's still things you can do. There's still things you can do even in these tested times. There's still things you can do. Do not give in to fear. Do not give in to the nonsense, the negativity. You know what I'm saying? While you can't say it won't ever be me because anything's possible, don't say woe is me. You dig what I'm saying? Don't There's still things you can do. We're gamers, man. We can still play video games even though my party has been defeated. We can still play games. You can still play tabletop games with your friends online. There's a million and one things you could do at your house to keep yourself entertained. And we just talked about a couple of them. There's still music. There's still, games. Things still exist. So, with all that being said, you can find this on Bread and Butter, MKE, at YouTube. If you type that in, it's all one word. It's the word bread, capital B bread, capital N butter, capital N butter. All three words are capitalized. The letter in the middle is capital, not N. And MKE is capitalized. That's how you find this on YouTube. That's where you're gonna find this talk. Hopefully we can do this same time next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. At some point on a Thursday. Or whenever we decide to do it, but we're gonna try to do. I want to try to get the crew back together next week. We just gotta find some more stuff to riff on. And thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen. As we proceed to give you what you need, we will end this thing off by saying thank you for listening. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Tell us what you think about all this nonsense. If we've given you something to think about, please let us know. And this concludes our broadcast day.